Timta hassa fi paren shilpa timta. Anuki sayud shilta maku shil atsekata am shil yamasi nuwabianat wahaza kalun hassahag at nidmeya arbedin arbed. I'm Chief Nanya Shabael of the Atsikata Nation of Yamasee Moors, plenipotentiary of Earth, and this is now fact number 244. This now fact number 244 is brought to you all courtesy
scientific genetic evidence.
while we're on the subject of genetics and the topic of genetics.
Indigenous fam. I have another good one. This one has scientific genetic evidence proving that we are indigenous to the Americas. Go ahead and use this video to shut up those Pan-Africanists. Let's examine the DNA of those who are living in modern-day Egypt, which they call ancient Egypt. I mean, the Museum of Cairo is there after all, which explores the history of the ancient Kemetic people.
Oh, I guess this is too hot for them. And my screen is not switching over. There we go. I'm glad we got this recorded. This is amazing. I'm so glad we got this on record. This is what they do want to talk.
It has mummies in it.
Oh yeah, they are just petrified. It is just freezing. This is the secret. This is unbelievable.
There's Afro pics. There's also sorts of things in that museum. Yes, I've been there to visit. Take a look at these folks. Now, take a look at this right here. It clearly states that this is their DNA. R1b, G2a, and mtDNA, haplogroups H and K. You all have heard of Ramses, is that correct? The guy from the Bible? Yes, it's him. Well, let's take a look at what his DNA is. Pharaoh Ramses.
They are just blocking this. This is wonderful. Yes. We are the ancient Egyptians today. And that will affect all commerce on the planet. Unbelievable. Oh, this is wonderful. We got this recorded. Let me try and optimize. Had no problem with Gatti boys, but as soon as I come to this woman's video, now it's a problem. Okay, and here's the video. Let's try this again.
DNA is E1b1a M2. Who else in the world has that same DNA? Oh, is it the so-called African Americans that has the same DNA as Pharaoh Ramses? Oh my goodness. Didn't they brainwash us to believe that modern day Africa is the motherland? So then why are all the people with the ancient Kemetic DNA in America if modern day Africa is the motherland? Somebody help me. Help me. Help a sister out. Someone, please explain to me why the majority of so-called African Americans in America has the E1b1a. People in Africa with the same DNA as the so-called African Americans are the Bemileke, the Ewe, the Ga, the Yoruba, and you see the list right here of all the different people with the E1b1a. Those with the E1b1b haplogroup would be those in the Horn of Africa, in Ethiopia, Somalia, Egypt, and all those, which proves that not all people in Africa are African. We're not all the same people, all so-called black people. Bear in mind, we are the original people of the earth. We were everywhere, all over the earth. People who look like us and similar. And last time I checked, A comes before B. E1b1a is the oldest DNA. Let's not forget our brothers and sisters in the Caribbean, y'all. E1b1a shows up all throughout the entire Caribbean, but mostly in Haiti, Haiti, Sac Passe, in Jamaica. Yes. Dominican Republic, St. Andrews, but again, it's all over the Caribbean as well, but mostly in Jamaica and Haiti. We're all the same people, y'all. We are the same people. We come from royalty, okay? Royalty, not slaves. So why don't those people in Giza have the DNA of Pharaoh? I mean, isn't that ancient Egypt over there in Giza? Isn't that what they taught us in history? That it's over on the continent of modern day Africa? So I need someone to explain to me why the so-called African Americans are the ones with the Egyptian Kemetic DNA, why all of the artifacts, the cities, the pyramids and everything were found right here in America and in the Americas. All of the artifacts, the Garden of Eden found right here in America. After all, the pyramids in modern day Africa, Giza, were actually modeled after the pyramids in America. Yes. Why? If modern day Africa is the motherland, why was everything found in America? Please help me understand that. And last but not least, why are the majority of people with Pharaoh Ramses DNA in America? Why aren't they over in modern day Africa? Why are they in America?
So, as I stated in Now Fact 243, white is defined as a person having origins in any of the original peoples of Europe, the Middle East, or North Africa. When we go to the haplotype for A1b1, it states it's a major human Y chromosome DNA haplogroup primarily found in Africa, particularly among the Niger, Congo-speaking populations with some presence in the African diaspora. Now, I did have a tab open. I'm going to see if I can find it where it talks about E1b1 in America. So why don't we just do that? And that will make things somewhat easier. see what the AI says. Haplogroup E1b1, also known as E68, is a major human Y chromosome DNA haplogroup, and it's a significant paternal lineage found in African Americans. With a strong presence in West Central Africa, where many enslaved men were taken to the Americas. No, this is a lie. So AI, you got to fix that. There was no middle passage. Same thing, Spike Lee, no middle passage. That was all BS. How do they explain that? The E1b1 is over here. What percentage of African Americans are E1b1a? Y chromosomal DNA, 60% of African Americans who were sampled in 2007 were of haplogroup E1b1a, within which 22.9% were particularly of haplogroup EM2. They also possess numerous SNPs. So what does this mean? That the indigenous people of the Americas are the so-called African American, they are so-called Caribbean, so-called South American. So that means the people who are First Nations, they're not indigenous to here, much less the planet. This fact is coming out now, and it has to be dealt with. There's no way getting around that. So now I'm going to connect this bridge here on this Instagram video. And this is pertaining to the battle going on between the corporations, United States of America and Canada, and how it relates to the First Nations peoples.
What the Liberal Party wants, and here's why. First, a little context.
This is important because this fact has to come out now.
Trump's tariffs are here, but it may be exactly what the Liberal Party wants, and here's why. First, a little context. Trump's tariffs have officially taken effect, slapping 25% on Canadian goods and 10% on energy exports. In response, Trudeau's government is firing back with $155 billion in retaliatory tariffs.
Oh, what happened there? Oh, they didn't like that, huh?
In a pandemic-style stimulus package. Canada's resource-heavy economy, where 80% of trade depends on the U.S., is taking a massive hit. Just how fragile the country's economic foundation really is. Alberta, which ships 3.5 million barrels of oil south every day, faces an $11 billion economic blow and a $5.2 billion deficit. Meanwhile, BC's mining and lumber sectors are bracing for a staggering $69 billion loss over the next 3 years. Desperate to stabilize its oil industry, Alberta is sinking $1.2 billion into carbon capture and storage, or CCS, a move critics call a last-ditch attempt to keep fossil fuels on life support. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This economic shock comes just as a BC Supreme Court ruling hands Indigenous communities unprecedented control over resource projects, striking down the Mineral Tenure Act for failing to consult First Nations on mining claims. While Indigenous leaders celebrate the decision, it threatens to upend resource extraction policies nationwide at a time when Canada is most vulnerable. And that's exactly where Trudeau's Liberal agenda begins to thrive. But the story runs deeper. A top-secret NSI COP report exposed China's covert operations targeting Indigenous leaders to gain control over Aboriginal-held natural resources. The report reveals China systematically researched and cultivated Indigenous delegates, viewing them as tools to secure access to Canada's strategic assets. Now, with the BC court ruling, these same leaders hold unprecedented power over mining, oil, and forestry. So, sure, Indigenous empowerment sounds noble, but in reality, it hands the Liberals and seemingly China a powerful mechanism to stall projects they've long despised, while shoveling billions into unproven renewables, branding it as resilience, all under the guise of justice. And for those who remain skeptical, Mark Carney himself suggested using emergency powers to push through infrastructure projects, the same green energy projects he has a financial stake in through Brookfield Asset Management. And to drive the point home here, Mark Carney, the Liberals' next leader in waiting, has deep ties to the Chinese Communist Party. His involvement with the Asian Infrastructure Bank, his deal-making between the Bank of England and the People's Bank of China, and his backing from CCP-linked influence groups at all political rallies these days, all raise serious red flags. And if that's not enough, we have verified intelligence reports that confirm China has already interfered in our elections to help the Liberals not once, but twice. If the upcoming stimulus package skews green, subsidizing solar over oil, it's a smoking gun. The Liberals, in conjunction with Chinese influence, look to get a stranglehold on the Canadian economy. So let's put all these pieces together. China infiltrates the Liberal government and interferes in our elections. China infiltrates Indigenous leadership to secure resource access. Trump's tariffs escalate in January 2025, now kneecapping Canada's resource industry. Then suddenly a long-dormant court case gets resolved as the BC Supreme Court ruling gives the Indigenous community and potentially China unprecedented control over resource extraction. The Liberals promise pandemic-style bailouts and then threaten to use emergency powers to implement their green infrastructure projects. And Trudeau? Well, publicly he rages against Trump's tariffs, but privately this crisis fits his agenda perfectly. Control the narrative, cripple the old economy, and force a utopian reset. So these tariffs are about forcing Canada to choose a path. Option 1, Trudeau's net zero fantasy, now turbocharged by the Indigenous ruling, giving First Nations and potentially China veto power over mining, oil, and forestry. Pair this with Alberta's energy crisis and the Liberal war on fossil fuels, and Canada could be driven into a full-scale green transition. The problem? Green tech can't replace the $69 billion we'll lose in BC alone, and taxpayers will have to foot that bill. Or we go with option 2. We push back. Overrule or sidestep the Indigenous ruling, legally or politically, and turbocharge resource extraction. Ditch U.S. dependency and diversify exports to Asia, India, and Europe. Alberta's CCS investment could be a transition tool, not a bailout, keeping oil alive while we secure new markets. Quebec's manufacturing could pivot to resource processing, and BC's lumber could flood Pacific Rim markets. The tariffs should be a wake-up call, an opportunity to break free from the U.S., and not a green light for economic suicide via green subsidies. But if Trudeau's Liberals use the tariffs and the Indigenous ruling to push their agenda, expect rebellion. Alberta might cut its own deals with China, India, or the U.S., and honestly, who could blame them? So while the media screams about the tariffs, the real story here is Canada's fork in the road. Do we bankrupt ourselves on liberal green fantasies, or do we turn this crisis into a resource-powered breakout? The dots connect. So if the stimulus leans green, we'll know exactly who's winning this trade war, and it won't be Canadians.
So, it's
Trump's tariffs are here, but it may be exactly...
It's Jonathan Harvey. Now, when they all see this video of the fact that the E1b1 haplogroup is the so-called African Americans, Afro-Caribbeans, Afro-Latinos are the original indigenous. What do you think is going to happen once they see this video? They're going to realize all the money they're giving to so-called First Nations is wrong because they're not indigenous to here. They're from the Red Deer Caves in China. They're Mongolian. Amazing. So this is what's going to happen. Now that everyone is seeing this, they're going to realize E1b1a. Are you a E1b1a? Then that means you're not really indigenous. Uh-oh. Better get Mako. And when we go to the chart, which I showed in Now Fact 243, a haplogroup E is the oldest one of the oldest haplogroups, E. The Jews are over here at K. What? Yes. We go to AI with a significant Ashkenazi Jews exhibit a unique haplotype distribution, a significant presence of haplogroup K in the maternal DNA, and a high frequency of RM17 in their Y chromosome DNA, suggesting a mix of European, what they call European, and Near Eastern ancestry. So they're not pure. Y chromosome DNA. Ashkenazi Jews have a higher frequency of the RM17 haplogroup compared to Sephardic and Kurdish Jews. RM17 is the dominant Y chromosome haplogroup in Eastern Europe, suggesting possible gene flow from that region. Besides the 4 haplogroup K and N1b founders, the major haplogroup in Ashkenazi Jews is haplogroup H at 23% of Ashkenazi lineages, which is also the major haplogroup in Europe. 40 to 50% in Europe, 25% in the North Caucasus, and 19% in the Near East. So when we go to this chart again, what was that haplogroup H and haplogroup K? So you have haplogroup K here and haplogroup H. So haplogroup E over here, E1b1a, E1b1b, is older than the Jews. So this explains why Israel outlaws DNA testing in Israel. It is illegal to test DNA in Israel because once people who are geneticists and scientists see that, the fraud about what's happening on that African tectonic plate called Israel, which is part of Africa, they want people to think it isn't, but it is, that's over. Just like the video that I just played here regarding the indigenous nations, when people see this video, when it's Jonathan Harvey, when they see that, because they're talking about sidestepping, you have to tell them that they're not indigenous. Ask them what is their haplogroup. So let's try, what is the haplogroup of American Indians? Haplogroup of American Indians. See what comes up. The 5 main mitochondrial DNA haplogroups found in Native American populations are A, B, C, D, and X. They don't even have E. Ouch! E is the oldest and they don't have it. Early studies of Native American mitochondrial DNA have shown that all Native American mitochondrial DNAs belong to haplogroups A, B, C, D, and X. And that some of these haplogroups are also common among the Northern Pacific Rim. The major Native American founding lineage haplogroup M3 accounted for 66% of male Y chromosomes and was defined by the biallelic markers M8, 9, M9, M45, and M3. Wow, what is that? Haplogroup A, the Apache or haplogroup A. So when we go back to this chart, E is the oldest. So the E1b1a and E1b1b, which is the so-called African American, Africans, person of color, so-called visible minority, we are the first on the planet. So therefore, all the resources, all the gold, the oil, all the semi-precious and precious stones, that's ours. I'm the only one who has contracted and put the contract out showing that I am in fact white, as well as, just put this on the screen here for everyone, as well as having a Lodial title that is on OpenSea. Newborn claims planet. Okay, original owner. There we go. And a Lodial title. So I claim the planet and have a Lodial title. I'll just go straight to my OpenSea. So all of these corporations that claim the British throne, of course, that's sitting here. No one's disputed that. And then we go to the NFTs and the tokens that I've created, proving this fact. We can go back down to the Lodial title using my DNA on a claim. Here we go. I'm going to open the link up. So the Lodial title is there. And the date, November 10th, 2022. It's been past 2 years. No one on the planet has disputed it. This evidence here of an E1b1 and bringing DNA into courts means that once you claim white, which is defined as a person having origins in any of the original peoples of Europe, the Middle East, or North Africa, this is endorsed by the U.S. Oh, did they take it off now already? Okay, U.S. Department of Education. That'll probably be gone in the next week or so. And there's no such thing as a black African American or black racial group of Africa. They don't exist. Black means pale anyway. And the American Indian or Alaska Native is a person having origins in any of the original peoples of North and South America, including Central America, which includes the Caribbean, and who maintains cultural identification through tribal affiliation or community attachment. So your American Indian and your white people are carbon people, dark skin, copper colored. The people saying they're Native American or American Indian and they don't have no E1b1 gene in them are Mongolian Pacific Rim. So I just want to finish up here with an interesting fact that when I put in E1b1 in America, you get only 3,000. However, if I do haplotype E, it's 9,810,000 right over here on the right. Then I did another search, E1 haplotype E1b1a, and what do we get? Only 7,980. How do you only get 7,980? But then if I do haplotype E, it's 9 million. So this is what they're trying to hide. Haplotype E is the oldest. It is the oldest. So no transatlantic slave trade. That's all BS. This was all one landmass. And then prior to the water coming in, people were walking back and forth, just like they walked from Canada to the US, right? Just across an imaginary line. And let's see the tools here. See, and 213,000 for the mitochondria for found in Native Americans. So we are the original people on the planet, Tamaraean, Egyptian, E1b1a. If you are white, you have to be E1b1a. And if you have no E1b1 gene in you, then you're not white. I just created a precedent, and I challenge all scholars to disprove me, all geneticists to disprove me, which we know you can't do because you already know. This is what white looks like. This is what First Nation looks like. This is what Indigenous looks like. E1b1a. So if you're Black or African American, you got to come on my webinar. I'll show you how to do it properly. And in this way, you will have standing at law. Kashikadur, kashikadur, kashikadur. White power, white power, white power.